tell me, I want to start a business today. What advice can you give me?
Start. I don't believe in failure. There's always a lesson that you can learn. Most recently, I became aware of McDonald's, the restaurant channel. I hope the folks at McDonald's are not watching this, just in case I get the data wrong. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we have is most of us are afraid of starting something. If you don't want to surround yourself with people that are up to something, you'll be up to nothing.
It's bringing me to say, do you have like young people in your church? You know, how do you guide them? Like,
can I shadow you? Can I talk to you? Can I learn from you? They may say yes, and they may also say no.
Man, this is a pastor talking, not really an entrepreneur. This is a pastor talking.
Project excellency and hoping that they will be able to see it in you eventually.
Great. It says, never stop learning because life never stops teaching.
That's a good one. You know, there's a preacher, he will have a quote that says, I always advocate for people to study because it's not advantage to be stupid in society. God is saying to Jeremiah, he says, I knew you before you were made. God was making a plan before he was making a man.
Yeah.
So if you want to get caught up to the plan, you have to be first caught up to the creator.
What is entrepreneurship?
Well, the concept of it is very simple. It's just the idea of starting something. So just try.
Can you say that more? One time, please. All right. Welcome back to the Fortunate Mindset Podcast. Here we are today. We're talking about entrepreneurship. And this is my brother, TK Taylor Kenda. So tell us, who are we having today?
What's going on? So we have Grace, who is an entrepreneur, a pastor, a leader in his family. There's a lot to say about him, but this episode, we're going to talk about the key characteristics and qualities that make a good entrepreneur. So what does it take? What qualities and how to be a good leader? And we dive into all sorts of different aspects on the leadership qualities and entrepreneurship journey. So tune into this episode.
All right. So without further ado, let's go to the episode right now and see you right there. So first of all, let's talk about something about what do you think is the mindset of a really successful entrepreneur?
It's many things. It cannot be one exclusive thing, but I think patience is a key mindset for an entrepreneur to have. Because most of the item or most of what you are trying to implement has never been done before. So you cannot give a time frame to something that you never done before, you never tried before. So I think patience is definitely one of them. Number two is people skill, how to communicate to people. There are some ideas that might be good on paper, but if you cannot communicate it to people, it's kind of hard to bring team together. So just on top of the back, like I was saying, patience, having people skill is definitely something to look out for.
I mean, that just rings a bell in my mind and reminds me of something that somebody said, like, to get something you never had, you need to do something you never done before.
Yeah.
So, and when you mention about being a good person in communication, having communication skills, it reminds me of a conversation that I had with my manager last week. He told me, like, Jonathan, there's something that you need to learn if you want to go farther in your career and in your life, wherever you are. You need to know how to articulate. You need to know how to communicate better. And in articulation, it's more about put your words together and give the right information, because people lay in what you tell them. If your information is not correct and you don't know how to explain to people what you've done, they cannot trust what you say. I love that. Taylor, what do you think about it?
Definitely. I would say a key entrepreneur must know the art of communication. And not only that, but you must, because every entrepreneur has a vision that they want the people to understand. But you must be able to communicate and then instill that vision onto other people so that they can follow that the same passion that you have.
Great. What about you, Mordecai?
well, Taylor said it best. That's what I was thinking about. If you have something, a plan, like even a constructor, you know, I usually put things together, right? We get airplane parts into pieces. You have to put them together. So you have a plan. So an engineer has an idea. So there are some people who have to put it together piece by piece. So you have to be able to communicate it very well. If they don't communicate their idea very well, everything will be messed up, right? I'm going to put this tongue in the back. You're going to put the exhaust tube in the front. It doesn't work like that. So they have to be able to express themselves very well so people can understand what they want, what he wants to accomplish. So you can, people in the world, they can sell you any ideas. Why? Because they know how to express themselves very well. Back in the days, people thought smoking was right. It was good. But why did people thought it was good, even though some people say it was bad? Because the people that were selling it knew how to sell it to you. They would give you the idea, oh, this is great. Just the way they communicated it, people believed it. So communication is very, very important. Yeah.
So tell me one thing. What is entrepreneurship?
Well, the concept of it is very simple. It's just the idea of starting something. I think for most of us, though, the word entrepreneurship is a little bit like taboo because we came from a society that was kind of, hand down to us where parents said, hey, go to school, study ABC, and then you'll be all right. Perhaps it was the greatest piece of advice that we could have received at that particular time. But now that we've come to places like America where the system is very dynamic, you went to school to become a doctor. The next thing you know that your job is being performed by a machine. So if you're not willing to learn, if you're not willing to be dynamic in your decisions and into learning new skills and spend your knowledge, you'll get stuck. So, entrepreneurship, very simple. The idea of starting or building something from the ground up. Sometimes it can be an idea that you've seen other people do, but you never done it yourself. To just pick it up, picking up people's mind, people's brain, to be able to put it all together and create something beautiful.
With that being said, can you tell us a bit about yourself, Grace, and what path has drawn you here into the entrepreneurship journey you're on?
Right. Grace Mutombo, and I'm from the DRC, Congo, Kinshasa. And I came in the US in about 2006. Did some of my high school here, some of my college here. And the very first 15 years or so of my youth, I spent them in Georgia, in Atlanta. And then about 6 years ago when I got married, I decided to move to Texas. And one of the things that you will notice as you are pulling into Texas is how big this place is.
Massive.
And then not only it's big, it seems like everybody's up to something. And, if you have to compare Texas to Georgia, Texas is like, it's a big,
It's a country.
It's huge. Right. So, for somebody like me, it was very challenging, trying to figure out like everybody's up to something, but I'm up to nothing. What will I then do? Professionally, I've always been in the IT field for many, many years. And I wanted something a little bit out of myself. Started asking myself some difficult question. Who am I? What is it that I want to do? What am I created for? To say the least, that I found it very easy to I find it rather satisfying to be able to just do things on your own. You're in control of your time. And I started putting some businesses together. I do run a tax office, tax consultant. I'm a tax strategist. I do run a brokerage service with tracking. I'm also in real estate. I'm a licensed realtor here in the state of Texas, also in the state of Georgia. And I'm also doing some real estate development in the DRC. So... And I'm pretty sure I probably forgot to mention something about myself, but I'm sure with time it will come along. I'm a preacher. Thank you.
I mean, that's great. I mean, you have a really inspirational life where you are an entrepreneur, a businessman, getting yourself starting in IT. First of all, I want to just get back into that. How did you shift from IT to entrepreneurship, getting into tax? Because you were in IT. How did you find yourself in tax?
That's a very good question. So the IT portion is kind of like I'm trying to put bread on my table.
Okay.
But I don't think I really have passion for just sitting out there coding or anything like that. But it's when you can do it, it's rather satisfying because the money is good. But I think my passion sort of kind of like is mostly into real estate. I love building. I love constructions. I love structures. And I just love the whole planning idea. Now, where does that lead me? It's the real estate industry can affect a lot of industries. It affects transportations, infrastructures, finances, things like that. If you are building, you are amassing a lot of wealth, whether you like it or not, you're going to be dealing a lot with IRS.
Yeah.
So if you know how to see what type of taxes applies to you, it can expand your knowledge. So I've always been one of those people that if something is interesting, I will want to learn it. So that's how I was able to acquire this knowledge of taxes, knowledge of transportation. Because if you're building, you have to be able to move one piece
location.
You are moving one piece of item from one place to the other. So if you know a little bit about transportation, you might be able to predict the outcome of your logistics around what you're trying to build and things of that nature.
Incredible. I mean, I love that. I'm already like in love with this conversation. I'm like, this conversation is going so good. So we had been in a conversation, and then Taylor was like, okay, we have Grace. Grace is there. And then he's a really good entrepreneur. He's a businessman. He's a pastor. And I was like, okay, what are we going to talk about? Then we were like taxes and other stuff. But our audience right now, it's most youth, right? We focus more in the youth and we create value for the young man. Let's say like a young man or a young woman is out there. You see Grace is there, a really successful entrepreneur, having all these businesses here in the US or out there in Africa. Tell me, I want to start a business today. What advice can you give me?
Start. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we have is most of us are afraid of starting something. And the reason we are afraid of starting something is because we're exposed to this data that tells us that 90% of or 80% of what people starts literally crashes. They don't go anywhere. While that might be true, if you are working today, you are working at some place that somebody else started. So that means that there's a 20% of chances of you being able to succeed. That's the first thing. The second of all is I don't believe in failure. There's always a lesson that you can learn, even if you were not able. I've seen people that started, like, let me give you an example of a company that we are all aware of. It's called Orange in Africa. When these guys came in Africa, they were selling cell phones. They were literally a device seller. After a while, they're like, hey, you know what? The cell phone stuff, it's only two people are dominating the markets, which is Apple and Samsung. So how were they going to make a living? They decided to become a network service provider. So they start selling Les Unités card, for you to be able to pull. Right. And then eventually they're like, hey, you know what? There's not a lot of money into this. They switched to something else. But lastly, what did they become? They finally became a telecommunication company. So if you don't want to be dynamic, you're going to get stuck. It's good to get started. If it doesn't work, switch it up. If it doesn't work, switch it up. If it doesn't work, switch it up. Most recently, I became aware, like McDonald's, the restaurant channel. I hope the folks at McDonald's are not watching this, just in case I get the data wrong. I became aware, like when we go to McDonald's, most of us think that we are going to a restaurant chain, to a food chain, right? But did you know that they were actually registered as a real estate company?
Really?
Talk about
At
it.
first,
They are still a real estate
still
company.
today.
Yeah.
And talk about
Let's
it.
talk about Tesla.
All
Many
right.
of us, when you think about Tesla, what are you thinking of? You are thinking about the car.
Electrical car.
But they actually register as a software company. So it's just do it. If it doesn't work, change it up. Nobody,
okay.
just give yourself that sense of pride of saying, hey, it may never work, but at least I started it. There are people that have had some very good idea. You've heard the famous story about Apple. Who started Apple? It didn't work. It didn't work. Steve Jobs started it. They're like, hey, man, we're not liking what you're bringing to the table. They push him on the side. You've heard the big technologies such as Xerox, how they started with the mass creation and things like that. So I always tell the youth, try it. There's never losing. If anything, you're gonna acquire an experience that the person that never tried will never have. So that's one of the advice that I tell people. And the other thing is, do not neglect skills. Surround yourself with people that are where you're trying to go.
Mhm.
You know, I'm a big believer of your network is your net worth. If you don't want to surround yourself with people that are up to something, you'll be up to nothing. So
Whoa.
just try.
Can you say that one more time, please? Can you say that again?
If you are not surrounded by folks that are up to something, you'll be up to nothing. So surround yourself with people that are inspiring you. Read a lot of books, you know, because I don't want to sound shady. A lot of the information that we had learned in Congo, how much of what you learned in Congo you have been able to apply in society? As a matter of fact, some of us even have gone to acquire even degrees.
Yeah.
You bring them in the US and they're like, no, we don't trust
We don't
you
even need that.
to touch somebody that's sick.
Yeah.
So you're like, man, at least I'm intelligent. You're not allowing me to touch somebody who's sick, you know? So you have to be willing to pay the price of learning something new, pay the price of starting something new, surround yourself with me. I call like, hey, I'll pick up my phone. I'm like, I saw you on YouTube. Can I shadow you? Can I talk to you? Can I learn from you? They may say yes, and they may also say no. But at least I know I tried my part to give I made that phone call. I took that bold step of faith.
Man, this is a pastor talking, not really an entrepreneur. This is a pastor talking.
Adaptability.
I'm not even giving any verses yet. This is a pastor talking.
I don't know, Murka, if you adaptability
now
is key.
it's bringing me to say, do you have like young people in your church? You know, how do you guide them? Like, you know, because entrepreneurship is very good, because I was going to a church on Wednesday when the church service, you don't find many people. All of them are stuck in jobs, Amazon or whatsoever. You know, they cannot, even myself, I cannot attend Wednesday services.
Right.
You know, because we are stuck in something that you're doing. So how can you, you know, help the youth in your church in order to have more free time, you know, have that freedom to come to church, to come to services? How do you attack those kind of problems?
Well, one of the things that I'm a firm believer of, you cannot guide somebody that doesn't want to be guided. So the person must first understand, they have to learn themselves enough to be able to come at the place where they feel like they need help. Because I've seen a lot of people, you see so much potential in them. You really do see it. It's up there. But they don't know they have those potentials in themselves. So if you start going to them, hey, come here, let me show you how to do IT. Come here, let me show you how to do taxes or transportation. They'll be like, what's wrong with this guy? I'm perfectly fine. So it's one of those things that I don't really try to put pressure on people, but I'd rather just let my light shine. You know, I'll invite you to my place. You come, you see me like, oh, okay. It's not in an apartment, it's into a home. Hoping that you'll go like, hey, brother, how can I purchase my own house?
Okay.
You know, those small things. Just try to present myself at the best version of myself. Hopefully they find me interesting enough to the point where they'll be able to interact with me. A lot of times, sometimes we might find ourselves, we feel like we want to teach these children what to do. When there's always a thing or two that we may also learn from them. So me, I always have an attitude of an ever student, of ever learning. My wife, sometimes she comes to me, she's like, babe, what are you reading? I'm like, this random book. I like the title. You know, I don't know the author, but you know, it's just I want to put myself into an environment where I'm ever learning, because you can never go wrong with a lot of information. But if you are lacking information, you might find yourself into a lot of troubles.
Definitely.
So I think that's my attitude to a lot of the youth, is to project excellency and hoping that they will be able to see it in you eventually.
Great. I mean, you mentioned something and it reminds me of this quote of like, it says, never stop learning because life never stopped teaching.
That's a good one. You know, there's a preacher, Renard Bonnke. I don't know if you've ever heard him.
Okay.
He will have a quote that says, I always advocate for people to study. Because it's not advantage to be stupid in society.
That's great. That's a good one.
I'm telling you.
The world is changing.
Yeah.
You know, our old challenges were things like having an email access, being able to log into your email. While some of us have parents that do not have email addresses, imagine today waking up trying to teach your parents machine learning, AI.
No thanks.
They're like, what's going on?
What's going on?
You know, the world is changing. So if you don't want to adapt as quickly as the world is changing, you might find yourself having a master's degree and you stand in front of some 15-year-old kids and you find yourself completely dumb.
Dumb.
So,
Yeah.
it's
True.
just-
True. I mean, I love that. I don't know what said or think about it, but you mentioned something about like knowing who you are and the reason why you are here on earth.
Mm.
So can you please elaborate and talk more about it? Like how can the person really know the reason why they are here on earth? Like who they are and why are they on earth?
Are we allowed to be religious on the show?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, go ahead. Go ahead. You're good.
Honestly, with all seriousness, I don't think anybody will ever know who they are until they get to meet the Lord.
Mm.
You
Okay.
know, because He's the creator.
Mm.
I think the creator knows the purpose for creation.
Mm.
So if you are serious about knowing your purpose here on earth, I think it's one of those prayers that you have to make, that you have that serious encounter with the Lord. I think in the book of Jeremiah, if I'm not wrong, I think the verse is 1:5, that God is saying to Jeremiah, He says, I knew you before you were made.
Mm.
So it's like God was making a plan before He was making a
Before
man.
Yeah.
So if you want to get caught up to the plan, you have to be first caught up to the creator.
Mm.
So I always tell people, I'm like, hey, we're in a society that's largely agnostic and sometimes atheistic in a sense.
Mhm.
But if you are serious about your identity as a person, you have to literally pray, cry out to God to literally guide you and show you. And because He's the creator and He loves you so much, He loves us so much, He cannot withhold that piece of information because He wants you to be useful to Him. So I always tell people, hey, get to God, talk to Him, says, why am I here? And I believe it's a matter of time He's going to show it to you.
Oh, no.
Mm.
As long as He sees the sincerity in your heart.
I mean, since you talk about like the God, how do I know that God is talking to me when I've talked to Him?
Well, that's a good one. God talks to men in many different ways.
Mhm.
In the Hebrews, it says that in old time, God spoke to men through prophets. Nowadays, He speaks to men through Jesus Christ. The name Jesus Christ is made known to men, but it's not known to heaven. In heaven, Jesus has a different name. It's called the Word of God. So you can get yourself acquainted to the Word in a sense, and you will eventually see how God talks to men, because it tells you how God spoke to Moses, how God spoke to Joseph, how He spoke to all these big names that we've come to read. But in the Roman also says that God also is made known through nature. You can observe nature and see God is talking to you. I remember the day I got baptized. I walked out of the water and I sat in front of the car. I was telling my friend, I was like, bro, do you see the tree? What about the tree? I'm like, I just never thought the tree was this beautiful before.
Ooh.
I've always seen trees, but
Thank
when was the last time you looked at a tree like this tree is beautiful?
God is in it.
You know, to some people it might be a bird.
Yeah.
To some people it might be mountains. God is in nature.
Mhm.
That's one way that God speaks to men. Another way that God speaks to people is through their parents. God is good. He has put people in place to guide us. So the one that refused to listen to their parents is also refusing to hear a good portion of the wisdom of God.
Mm.
You know, God speaks to men through churches, through pastors. You are probably familiar with a man by the name of Samuel.
Mm.
The first time God interacted with Samuel, God was calling him, but God was calling him to the voice of His prophet.
Of His prophet.
Mm.
So, you have to we have to come to a place where we understand that God has more to tell us than we have to tell Him. So as long as we hunger to hear Him, to be guided by Him, hey, you will know that this is God speaking. God can speak through birth. God can speak through death.
Mm.
God can speak a party. God can speak a funeral.
Mm.
God can speak even in, we read the story of Jonas, even in the belly of a fish, God can still speak to you.
Mm.
So we have to develop that inner sense in us that to come to a place that God can speak to us at any time. I remember one time I told my son, I said, go to sleep, he was asking out because we have a habit of praying at night. I say, son, I won't be able to pray today. I have a lot of stuff to do on my desk. And he's literally saying, no, daddy, you cannot. You have an appointment with God every day. So I was like, oh, you know what? I have to.
Your son putting you in check.
How God speaks to you. And He also speaks to us through our inner spirit.
Yeah.
You can just feel sometime, You just feel like you have to call somebody.
Yeah.
And the minute you call them, like, oh, you know what? I just touched my phone. I was actually about to call you. You're like, what is that? That was, some
Keep calling
spirits
to the
networking taking place. In a nutshell, God speaks to us in a lot of ways. And I feel like a lot of time when we start coming out with things like, this is the only way that God speaks to us, that's where we get stuck, and we start becoming suddenly all religious in a sense. But hopefully.
And as a pastor, how do you manage like church, business, God, and everything that is going on in your life, like business, preaching, because it's work. It is very important, and family all together. How can you manage all of that?
I want to correct something. I'm not a pastor.
No, but a preacher.
Before
a preacher.
somebody goes on and start looking for
Yeah, so let's say a preacher, and preacher or minister in the church. How to manage all of that, because we know one thing that kills ministry is like money. When you get too much money, some people may take a different path than the path of God. So how do you can manage all of that together?
The Bible speaks of having talents. Some were given 2 talents, some were given 5 talents, some were given more. The most important thing is to know what your capacities are. How much load can you take on yourself? Because if you take on too much, you might run yourself down. And if you take too little, you might not find satisfaction into what you tend to produce. The key thing is to just finding a way to organize yourself with your daily schedule. My home, for instance, at 9 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m., I'm already tuning myself into getting ready for prayer. It doesn't matter what I'm working on. That's the most important thing at that particular hour. Also, in the morning, I know that I have to take care of my job and the things that I do day in and day out. You just got to come up with a plan, a schedule that you're going to abide to. It also goes into discipline. How disciplined you are with yourself, because sometimes we might try to privilege one over the other while they are equally important. And I think it's just about finding balance into our daily schedules. You'll be able to manage all those stuff.
Certainly, yeah.
And if that very specific question, if you were to balance it with the professional life, you might also find yourself that you might have good skills and leadership. And if that's the case, it might be necessary to understand what delegation is. You know how to do things, or you are caught up into one thing, you delegate it to somebody else that might still give you the same result without you necessarily having to burn down yourself.
This definitely all of this that you just mentioned plays a key role in knowing who you are.
Right.
And once you know who you are, it goes down the line of being able to then choose the kind of entrepreneurship journey you want to do, whether any type of business, any type of challenge you want to take on, or problems you want to take on. Because entrepreneurship is solving a problem.
Exactly.
You're solving a certain problem in the society so that you can benefit with finances, but you're also resolving a certain issue that's in the community.
Absolutely.
So you have to know who you are first and what capacity you have.
Absolutely.
So that you can then give the best in that role, in the problem.
I like the fact that you say entrepreneurship is about solving problem. I think that's a key aspect of entrepreneurship, because most of us were taught, especially growing up, hey, there's a problem, run away.
Yeah.
But there are other society where they are told, hey, here's a problem, come and solve it. So that's why we are seeing a mass migration of people leaving Africa, while we're also seeing a mass migration of people leaving Asia to go to Africa.
True.
You're like, what's going on in this plane? It all seems like 2 people are literally changing locations. And if we can just have that mindset that entrepreneurship, it's all about solving complex life problems that are for the betterment of humanity, I think many people will embrace entrepreneurship.
Great. I mean, being an entrepreneur or starting a business, because you say entrepreneurship is just starting something, creating something, and solving a problem, right? And for somebody who's new to that, I think that they will make a lot of mistakes in the way.
Right.
So what would you say are the common mistakes that entrepreneur make?
Not being prepared enough to fail.
I was not expecting for that.
I think failure is a key
Wow.
indicator that you are progressing.
How's that?
Just imagine if you were planning to create an airplane for the very first time.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you happen to create a structure that will actually find itself in the air.
Mm.
Everybody else that was working on that project, for that piece of craft to work, they know that the alternative will be to go down. Because they know the consequences of failing, they will put so much work into making sure that it doesn't fail.
It does.
So that's what I say, being prepared to fail.
Oh.
So they're working. They're like, if we fail, it's catastrophic. So what do we have to do? Plan so that you can eventually succeed. And I think a lot of people, when they find those heartache when putting businesses together, they tend to give up. While to some people, they might just be like, going back to the design phase of what did we get wrong? Push until you get it right. Rarely are people that do things the first time and those things are good. It takes a lot of tries. It takes a lot of mistakes along the way for you to eventually come up to that outcome that you are thinking of bringing. And I couldn't think of any particular example right now, but because there are so many, of people that have tried, they've failed.
Right.
We enjoy Elon Musk today in our society as a genius. He's the first one that talks about how many things he has tried to do that failed, that didn't work. And some of them that even worked, but in his brain is like, this thing didn't come up to be the way that I wanted it to be.
Exactly.
But still, he didn't give up. So
I even remember the first time that he introduced the Cybertruck. The first time, like he had to throw like something, and then it broke,
right?
And it was all over the news, and people were talking about it.
Yep.
And that makes me just remember that, all of us going to school, they will punish you when you do something wrong, and when you don't succeed in your notes, you bring a bad note at home, your parent punish you for not succeeding at school because you failed. So do you think it plays also like a kind of a role into our mindset when we try to get ourselves into entrepreneurship or becoming a business person, that fear that we've been growing up with, like we're gonna get punished?
That's a very, very good question, because I think that's where your surrounding and your network becomes very vital.
Yep.
Because let's say you are surrounded by people that knows you as Jonathan, and deep down they really never believe in you. It doesn't matter what you try to sell them, they will never believe in you. But at the same time, if you have 2-3 people around you that knows your ability and what you are capable of, they will always be cheering you. For instance, I've always tried as much as I can to study my boys as much as I can. I have a 1-year-old, like, he will try to walk and it will fall. It will fall. It will fall. I don't be like, hey, you are stupid for falling. I don't say, hey, sit down. You're not going to walk for the rest of the day. But instead, the minutes that they fall, I'm like, oh, good job, Papa. Stand up. You can do it. The more you are saying it, his brain is catching up that, hey, I took 2 steps and fell. Now I got to take 3 or 4. And eventually, it will start even walking. So if you surround yourself with folks that are always negative, unfortunately, it will play in you. But if you surround yourself with people that are up to something, that people that knows how hard it is to do something, because it's very difficult to do something that, especially that never been done before. So you want to make sure that you are paying attention to who is around you, who is speaking into your life, because faith comes by hearing. So if people are telling you constantly that you cannot do something, you will eventually believe them.
Believe it, yeah.
But if people are sitting out there, they're like, hey, you can go to the moon. I mean, you can literally go to the moon because it's been done before, you know? So the question is, I remember when I was a little boy, this is very funny. My dad, I was always like the second or the third, but I was never the first in class. But one time I wanted a bicycle. My dad told me, he says, Grace, if you bring me a bicycle, if you make good grades and you are the first in your class, I will get you a bicycle. Not only I became the first, but my margin were by far than the second person that was always the first that whole time.
Oh.
Why? Number one,
Motivation.
because my dad thought that I could be the first. So it put a reward next to the challenge. And when I did it, I finally became first. I look at the second as this guy is really dumb. You see where I'm coming from?
I see that.
So, it's you really got to pay attention to your surrounding and what you let enter into you. I try when I meet people and I sense that this person is very negative, this person can never see the outcome before the process. I try my best to limit my interaction with those people because naysayers, they will literally tell you cannot do it. Like when you think about people being all the way up there to the moon and visiting different planets, why would you think that it's impossible for you to do something here on Earth? So
Certainly.
kind of like my approach.
The fear of failure is real.
Yeah.
It's real in entrepreneurship. It's real in everyday life, in school, in education. It's real. And part of being a good entrepreneur, it's also knowing the art of resilience,
Right.
being resilient and perseverant in even the toughest circumstances. I believe in the other podcast that we had, we were talking about we brought up Elon Musk as well as Thomas Edison, who's failed over 1,000 patents. And there's a lot of other entrepreneurs that have failed, but because they had the art of resilience, they understood that if this one fails, it's fine. This is a lesson that I can learn to pivot myself onto the next project. And then they kept going and pushing forward. You have to be able to learn that failure is not the end. Some people just stop at failure and then they say, dang, it can't happen. I can't do it. I can't get it done.
Also, let me just highlight one thing.
Yeah.
There is nobody great that we know them for being a failure.
Exactly.
No.
Everybody that we knew them for their success.
Yeah.
So if you fail, just don't give up on yourself because we don't talk about those that fail. We will always talk about those that have succeeded. Whether we like the success or not, the bottom line is they're doing something that 99.9% of the people won't do.
True.
It's as simple as that.
Oh, incredible. I mean, this just like leave my mind a bit. Like I'm always, when somebody speaks, ideas come in my mind like some popcorn, So right now that you're telling this fact, I'm like, I'm in school right now. I'm learning, and I hope somebody out there that is watching or listening, can also really learn. And if you find like this is really important to you and it's really helped you, please let us know that in the comment section below. Like, what have you learned so far from Grace? So going back to Grace, what do you think that you talk about failure, you talk about environment, you talk about surrounding yourself with the people. What if somebody doesn't have anybody who can help him out?
We are living in a great society today. Did you know you can, there 80% of the knowledge that we need today is online. You can learn. I've seen people that learn coding they're good at coding computers, right? They learned it from YouTube.
Right. Yeah.
I think just TikTok, for instance. I was watching this whole debates going on into the US Senate, start talking about banning TikTok. Why? Because the US believe that the code for TikTok is strict to where in the US it shows kids dancing and
they
things like
argue
that.
against the algorithm.
While in Asia and China, people are using TikTok to create markets, to study, to do great innovation, right? But the algorithm on this side is kind of like making kids a little bit stupid, if we can say that. So I think we have more access to knowledge today than we ever did at any given time. I remember just a long time ago when I first moved to this country, outside of the many books that I had to carry in my back, I had to put this big old dictionary that I was carrying with me. But today, all that is into my piece of phone. Yeah. So you have to make a decision of, you have a phone where you have all this
Resources.
options, resources, but what are you going to navigate into? What are you going to be drawn to?
Yep.
You have to make that self-discipline in you to say, this year, this is what I'm going to be learning. This year, this is going to be a new skill I'll be acquiring. And a lot of time, there are people that can go through a whole year, they didn't acquire a new skill. I just recently discovered that I have a cousin of mine who speaks Chinese. And the parents are like, the parents are like, what's going on with this kid?
Okay.
They ask me, where did you learn Chinese? They're like, on YouTube.
Oh.
I never went on YouTube once to look for what Chinese was. So, you can literally decide to acquire knowledge, and the best venue to acquire knowledge today, obviously, if you don't have a lot of resources, go on YouTube. There's a lot of free teach that people have, like free courses on almost any subject you can think of.
Just that reminds me.
And also having mentors is very key.
Oh, the conversation we had last time. I mean, we just had almost the same conversation with Taylor and I. And about YouTube, I think was it yesterday or Friday, we've been together. We've been talking about going to learn the guitar, going to learn improving. And then Taylor mentioned something, bro. We have YouTube University. So it's a free university where you can go, you learn about every single thing. It's only if you want to.
Absolutely.
You can.
Absolutely.
So now let's go a bit. You have mentioned about that you cannot help somebody that doesn't want to be helped, right? And somebody needs to have that willingness, that idea that they want to be helped. Just makes me remember about what somebody said. Like they say, even God cannot help somebody who doesn't want to be helped. I don't know if you can agree with that or disagree with that as a preacher. And then he said that like you can have two people, right? You give them a car full of gas. You give them the map of where they have to go. One has the willing to go, and another one doesn't have the willing to go. And both of them at the final destination, they will get, there is like a well of gold that they will get there. The only thing they need to do is take the car, the map, and drive.
Right.
The one who has the willing will what? They will drive, they will go.
Yeah.
But the one who doesn't have it,
Right.
they feel like, bro, it's too far.
Yep.
I'm so tired.
Excuses.
That's true.
Excuses.
Mm-hmm.
So, which simply means that I've learned from that is, so you need to be consistent. That's why Taylor said resilient, being consistent and having the willingness to do and to require what you want to have.
Right.
By that, I want to ask you a question. How can somebody be resilient and consistent?
Taylor, I'll let you take that one.
How can you be I mean, what I can say, it's a good point that you just brought up. Being resilient, it goes back to knowing yourself, and it plays a key role is in integrity. If you have a certain goal that you want to obtain, and in order for you to obtain it, you know that you have the passion in yourself, and you have to instill that passion in other people as well. If you're motivated and pursuing that passion in the right way, you know that you can't. There's any obstacle that comes in your path, it cannot bring you down. You have to be able to push through it and then overcome it. That's pretty much what resilience is. Just overcoming any obstacle that comes in your presence, in your path for that's stopping you from reaching your goal. So that can happen in any type of situation. So if you're starting a business, for example, you're an entrepreneur, you want to get into, let's say, for example, you want to start a tech company. All right. And then you see that there's other competitions and other people that are also doing the same thing, they have the same vision in today's market. You can be resilient in the minute details. Get a team around you of people that are also that are code in certain languages. They know what's required in today's market, and any obstacles that comes up, perhaps seek for advice from other people that already know what it takes, from bigger fish in the pond, if I can say it that way, from bigger companies. Keep pushing through. Don't let the little minute failures stop you from learning and growing as a bigger entity. So all that plays a key role in being resilient, and also just the mental game as well. A lot of it is in the head. So if you tell yourself that you can't do it, of course you won't. Or if you hear and people are telling you that you can't do it, you take the criticism negatively, of course you're gonna go down yourself. So that's what I would say in terms of just being resilient. Push through no matter what.
Amazing. I mean, that's a really good take, because nowadays, let's go back online, right? Let's go back on the internet, seeing all these young men and women willing to be entrepreneur, getting businesses. From what I've seen is most people just give up because they want short win. They want to succeed tomorrow. They want to have things that go so fast. They want, like, I invest today and tomorrow I have the revenue from what I've invested. So you guys talked about having a goal and making people follow your goal. That to me sounds like leadership, right? So do you think like leadership plays a really crucial or important role in entrepreneurship?
Very pivotal way.
Absolutely, it does. But we have to understand that there are different type of leaders. There are what we call born leader. You can see them from the time they're young. They like taking the front
Initiative.
role.
Wow.
There are those people that can be trained to become leaders. And there are the lazy leader.
Yeah, that's true. You do it for me.
So okay, let me give you something to think about. Jesus was a born leader. Without Jesus to do anything he did himself.
Yeah.
But he also picked ordinary men that he trained to become leaders. And not only trained them to become leaders, he told them that if they follow his footstep, they had the ability to do more than he was doing. And they ended up eventually doing just that.
Yeah.
And you have some leaders that, hey, we're just waiting on you to do something so we can follow you. But unfortunately, there are also what we call the wannabe leader, but they don't want to pay the price for leadership.
Yeah.
So you have to understand which one you are. Are you a leader? Are you somebody that can be made into a leader? Or are you a lazy leader? So once you know which one you are, you might also be able to pay attention to who is surrounding you. For instance, there is a lazy leader. This guy that just sitting out there watching cows and stuff. And God comes and tells him, he's like, hey, you have to move my children out of Israel, out of Egypt.
Yeah.
And he goes like, how am I going to do it? So it's like, God thinks he's got it. He don't think he's got it. That's a type of leader. And there are also those leaders that a challenge is always welcome. They feel like, oh, it's challenge. It's very easy. I can overdo it. I'll never forget one of my early years in the US. My dad bought me this bed off Amazon.
Okay.
And he wanted me to put it together. So I took the bed and I started putting it together without reading the instruction. My dad comes to me and say, hey, you should be reading those instructions. I'm like, no, they're going to take so much time. And as I started putting the bed together, I struggled. I was like, there's something just not working.
Yeah.
That is like, no, just open the book. I'm like, well, I've already got it almost up. I might as well just figure it out instead of reading, because then that will require me to put it all together. Then by the time I struggled with the whole bed, I was like, I gave up. I had to break down the bed. I went back to reading that little manual, only to find out it was something very, very simple. It didn't take me as much time as I did.
Okay.
And by the time I finished, I was like, man, I wasted a lot of time by not reading.
Mm.
So you can also pay the price of just surrounding yourself with other leaders.
Mm.
The problem we have is a problem of subordination. A lot of people, they don't want to learn. Like, oh, if I have to learn from this guy,
Mm.
he's going to think he's all that.
Yeah.
If you're out there, you have a podcast, and I'm trying to have a podcast, it will save me a lot of headaches if I just come to you,
Yeah.
because you've already had to take that leadership of starting it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes a lot of people, they're like, well, if I'm really a leader and I go learn from somebody else, then I'm really not a leader, I'm a follower.
Yeah.
You can still be a leader, but also learning from people, because there's always somebody that knows more than you. There's always somebody that has more than you.
Always.
You know,
Always.
you have to be humble enough to know who you are, and humble enough to go to the people that has the skills that you are looking for, because you can have leadership in finances. You might not probably have leadership into other things.
Yeah.
So if you are looking to ever expand, you have to be humble enough to be like, hey, this guy's into aviation mechanic and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Taylor,
Yeah.
I want to learn from you.
Sure.
You know, that's also a leadership. But some people think just because they're acquiring now, they're wanting to learn something, that suddenly stops by making them a leaders. No, it's also a leadership skill to learn.
Yeah.
No, I mean, there's a lot I can unpack from that. One of the things that you said, I want to say, approve two things that you just said from here. One, oh my, you know that Jesus Christ, being one of the greatest leader that we've seen, of course, he was leading a group, but even the greatest leader was following the will of God. So,
Ooh.
of course, you can be a great leader. I mean, but the art of being able to understand what you're pursuing, it's okay to follow another greater person. But I want to touch on something that you just mentioned here in terms of just being able to understand yourself and where you're headed towards. There's this saying, I guess you could say, if I can get back to it. Usually in entrepreneurship, a lot of people don't see that, they don't understand that once you have something already created, you can also just you can offset it essentially. So there's some of the most successful entrepreneurs in the world. Some of the most successful, I'm telling you, they make millions and millions of dollars. They're lazy born leaders, I guess you could say.
Yep.
And let me explain the way I'm headed there. So, because the reason why I'm bringing this up is because you're talking about leadership, various different qualities of leadership, right? So, entrepreneurs that are lazy, what do? It's not that they're lazy to lead, but they offset what they do. They create systems around them.
Yep.
They create a system that works for them. They're not working in a company anymore. They've already created a company that's matured to the point where they don't have to be especially in real estate. You don't have to be in every single door, managing every single door and every single clients. You don't have to communicate to the clients. Or even if you're doing agriculture, you don't have to be in your farm. So an entrepreneur that knows their business and they've matured it, and you want to kick back, why not offset it to a different management group? So that also plays a key role in just and scaling to a massive point where you're going beyond other competition.
Now I'm going to be the one asking questions. So
Okay.
What area of your life do you think you have a sense of leadership on?
Ooh, that is a really great question. A really great question. What area in my life that I have a good sense of leadership on? I believe more.
And this is for the viewer, by the way, just in case you think it's for me.
No, it's a really great question. It's a really great. First, to begin with, I'm a leader at my work.
Okay.
I have a team of 21 people.
That's a good one.
and it's a crazy team,
Yep.
but hard worker. So I'm a people person.
You have a leadership of people.
Of
Cool.
people.
Taylor, have you thought about that?
Yeah, certainly. Various different areas. First, of course, work. I'd lead a group of other engineers as well, and young engineers, interns and whatnot. So apart from that, of course, I'm a firstborn in my family, so there's a whole bunch of people behind me.
So
So both of us are.
So
oh, me too. Oh, okay.
that also
That's
plays a huge factor.
huge
That's,
responsibility.
Yep.
the family's
Leadership is
and then of course
responsibility.
I'm starting my own family,
Right.
So just being the group of my
True.
the leader of my group,
Yeah.
True.
of my clique,
True.
my family.
Yeah,
So
true.
that's in and of
That's
itself
correct.
a challenge already. So
Mm.
it's
Another aspect is that I believe everybody can be a leader.
Okay.
Everybody can be a leader. It's a matter of knowing in what area do you want to display your leadership.
certainly
There are some people that always feel good to be in the back of the class. Now, it's funny that I even mentioned this, especially for those of us that came from Africa, especially me, Congo. In school, we used to have this that we used to call the captain of the class.
Yeah.
Like if the teacher is not here, you're the one who's gonna tell everybody, be
Yeah,
quiet or
be
else
quiet.
you don't get a grade.
Yeah, I
you know?
remember that.
So you can see, you can embrace it enough to the place where even your peers acknowledge you. A new teacher might come in and be like, hey, we have to install a leadership. And
Yeah.
all of your friends gonna be like, you know what? Give it to that guy. So, but just giving that small piece of example just goes to say anyone can be a leader, anybody can become a leader, and you can train yourself to acquire a lot of leadership skills. There are people that, especially when because a good leader is also the one that can also make other people leaders.
Yeah.
certainly.
And
True.
never be afraid with their shine.
Yeah.
I see that typically into music, like you can craft somebody who was a nobody to become somebody even bigger than you.
Yeah.
And so everybody has the ability to become a leader. It's a question of what area of your life do you want to display that leadership. And
we talked a lot about skills that the qualities that makes a good entrepreneur and a good leader.
Yep.
What are those skills? Because I think it would be good for some of the audience to know what they can do to acquire those skills. And I know there's a lot. Communication is one of the biggest and we've already mentioned this as well. What would you say are some other qualities and skills that need to be worked on and acquired?
As a leader or
as a
entrepreneur?
As a leader
I think an entrepreneur is a leader.
Is a leader.
As an entrepreneur and a leader.
So first of all, as far as I'm concerned, the skill that you need to have is having a big heart to support. That brings me to say that being hard to support is taking back to you to being patient. Because you might have some people that will understand fast your idea, and there are some people that will be so late to understand what you want them to do.
Exactly.
Right? Then if you don't have patience, then you might be frustrated. And by that brings to the second one, you need to be a person who can handle stress. Because I heard Patrick Bet-David, if I'm not mistaken, is like, you cannot be a leader if you cannot handle pressure and stress. Because a leader is somebody that all the pressure comes to you. When things goes well, they might say congratulations to you, but not most every time they congratulate your team. They'll be, team, good job, great job, everything fantastic. And when everything goes wrong, they come to you. Grace, what happened?
Yep.
No, that's true.
That's true.
You see,
Yeah.
Grace, what happened? Because they are not expecting those people to explain the issue or the problem that happened. So they want you now to say, what happened?
Exactly.
If you cannot have that mindset of handling stress, you will crack.
Yep.
That's why so many people since they don't have that skills, they start cursing. They start like telling things, shouting at people because they don't have that balance
Yeah.
of handling stress.
To also add to that list, I will say you have to be able to hold yourself accountable.
Definitely.
Because I think many people want the paycheck of leaders, but they don't. When things go wrong, they want to hide, or they want to say they were not the pilots. For instance, let me give an example in our society today. The CEO of an airline company is not a pilot.
No.
But anytime a plane goes down,
True.
he has to answer what was wrong with the wings, what was wrong with the tires, what were wrong with the passenger, and suddenly they have to become an expert at everything. And sometimes they have to go and start answering questions to even the Senate. You know, but you will sense people that are into leadership when pressure comes. They start asking them to speak on behalf of the team. Instead of saying, I take full responsibility of that and we're going to get to the bottom of it, they start pointing fingers. That's not a good quality of leadership. So you have to be able to hold yourself accountable at all times. 2, you have to be somebody that pays attention to details. Paying attention to details doesn't necessarily mean to be vocal.
No.
You just have to start sensing, observing what's working, what's not working. You have to be able to delegate. We talked about delegation earlier, because sometimes, even in an airplane, you're not going to be the one that's crafting every single part of that airplane. You might have the drawing together, but it requires a lot of skills to be brought together around the table for people to capture your mind. Another quality of a good leader is we talked about the ability to build other leaders as well. A good leader is also somebody that's always learning.
Definitely.
Another good quality of leadership is the ability to take in feedbacks. You know, I recall the first time they've ever given me a feedback in America, I cried. And then they call me on side, they're like, why are you crying? I'm like, this guy doesn't like me. He's always telling me what I'm doing wrong. They're like, no, we are telling you this so that you can improve.
Right.
So if you have people around you that can give you feedback, you have a great team. You have a great, and especially if they are genuine, you have a great team. And by the way, this list cannot be exhaustive, because
I can go around and add also be a critical thinker.
Oh, that's a good one too.
Be a critical thinker. And don't take things personal. When you are a critical thinker, you don't take things personal. Why I'm saying it? Because sometimes you need to get, when I say like you need to be good with people, sometimes somebody can come to work, they might have a really huge issue at home, but they might not come and tell you that, hey, I have this problem. You just see a person is unproductive. So if you now go with kind of like taking personal as somebody's just being lazy, you might even drown that person. They might drown and go even wrong with the thing. But if you try to be a critical thinker, being strategic, and then maybe call the person, try to talk to them. Is everything okay? Like, why is this happening? Why did you make this mistake? Why did you have everything to do the job correctly, to do it well? Do you feel like I need to help you with anything? Or do you feel like I'm not giving you all the necessary things that you need for the job to be done? So maybe the person will not say, okay, I have everything, maybe, but I have this problem at home. My kid is sick, or my wife is divorcing me.
That's where the people skill comes in place.
That's the people skills. So a good leader, try not to take things personal. Not at all, at any cost. Because when you take things personal, I'm telling you, bro, you crush it all. Because there'll be people, and be okay with people not liking you.
That's one. There's the list is long, just like Grace said.
The list is so long that
there's
we
so
cannot
many other things. You have to be empathetic.
Like somebody told me,
There's so many other things.
Somebody told me, like, Jonathan, don't worry about people not liking you. Make sure they respect you.
Yep.
They might not like you, but if they respect you, they will do what you tell them to do. And by that, I take it somehow, I say, sometimes it's good, it's right, sometimes it's wrong. Now, the way I do it, I'll be like, okay, all the people that came here before, they were not doing like more than 6 months in that position. They were quitting, going because
Too much pressure.
too much pressure.
Too much.
Like too much
They can't
pressure.
handle it.
That not at all. And then I just say, what can I do? I start now like listening to books, reading books on how to be good with people,
Yeah.
learning human nature,
Mm-hmm.
like trying to see like how people react to certain things.
Yep.
Trying to understand like why do people do things.
Right.
And I can recommend books. Read books, the 48 Laws of Power
Mm.
by Robert Greene. Read the book of the Law of Human Nature by Robert Greene. Read the book of like how to talk to people.
Mm.
The 92 tricks of like conversation and
Yeah.
stuff. So those books helps you really to understand people and read the book. This is a crazy book that people don't really read the most, is read people like a book.
There's also the 48 Laws of Power.
Yeah, the 48 Laws of Power.
That one is
That
very
one
instructive.
is a really strong book.
Yeah.
And the book read people
Yeah.
like a book.
Because one of the challenges that leaders do run into is when somebody, for instance, comes for a job interview,
Mhm.
what they're presenting you is the best, right?
Yeah.
They're presenting you the intellect.
Mhm.
You hire the intellect.
Yeah,
What happened when they go home? They have to deal with something emotional.
emotional.
They bring you
So
the
it's like
personal
what
side.
they bring into work is no longer what you hire. Now it's the
Yeah.
emotion that's guiding them.
Mm.
So you also have to be able not to be too emotional at that particular
Emotional.
point, because
Mhm.
sometimes the mistakes that we have is we want to respond emotion by emotion. You
Yeah.
talked about being empathetic earlier, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I remember there was an issue that happened at one of my jobs, and this girl came and she said something like I was empathetic. So they called me. They're like, "Hey, this girl, she said you're not empathetic," and I was like, "What does that even mean?"
Wow.
So they were like, "Okay, this guy's definitely not empathetic."
He doesn't even know what it is.
So we have to study. We have to mature enough.
Mhm.
It's I think a lot of people, they take it lightly. How important is it to study how to handle people and adversity?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, that's
very
true.
key,
Mhm.
especially in countries like the US. You have to literally invest into yourself to be able to know that. I was having a conversation with somebody that was emotional.
Mhm.
I was having a conversation with somebody that was being intellectual.
Mhm.
I was having a conversation with somebody that was even being spiritual.
Yeah.
Because if somebody's being spiritual, you think they're being emotional, you're going to miss it.
Mhm.
If you think somebody's being emotional while they were trying to be intellectual, you will also going to miss it.
Mhm.
So you have to cultivate yourself enough when you know that these guys that are surrounding me, they're speaking to me intellectually. This is the area of life where they found themselves in, because you might find yourself firing the best engineers that you have simply because he was having a bad day,
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Like being flexible and adaptable to
Yep.
situations.
dynamics
Adaptability is
into
very
situation.
important. It plays a key in
yeah.
and just being able to be a good entrepreneur and leader
yeah,
long term,
in the
Yep.
long term.
not
I
just
mean,
for right
I,
now.
I can speak it. I live with Taylor. We're not living at the same place, but we are almost every time. I can see he's a leader,
Right.
right? He's a leader. The way he adapts himself, he conducts himself, the way
Mhm.
we are together,
Mhm.
and you can see a person.
Right.
I'm a good observer,
Right.
and he knows it. We can be there. We sit. He asks me about somebody, like, Jonathan, what do you think about that person? I don't know the person. Maybe for the first time that I see that person,
Mhm.
and then I tell him, bro, that person is this. He'd be like, you're right.
Mhm.
And I observe him. I observe almost everybody that we are together with.
Right.
I haven't observed you yet. Don't worry if you're thinking about that. So
That's a good one. That's a good one.
so,
Yeah.
A good leader is also a charismatic person.
That's a key one.
Certainly.
Charismatic, like, and a good
So-
listener.
I gotta ask you this question since you brought it up.
Mhm.
You think charisma, it's something that you are, or is this something that you can become? Being charismatic.
You can
Great
definitely,
question.
you can
Tell
definitely,
you can go
sure,
ahead.
sure. I mean, it's something that you can say a kid that's born maybe 8 years old and he's very charismatic in his personality and he's outgoing and whatnot. And then there's some people that are born shy and they're not really outgoing. They're not charismatic. They don't know how to be in certain situations. And then they grow out of that because they've been put in certain situations and they've learned to adapt to their circumstances.
Yep. Yeah.
So if you're learning to adapt to those circumstances, you'll be fine. So you can learn to be charismatic. And there's actually, I forget her name. There's a woman that wrote a book on how to be charismatic, and
wow.
she shows those leadership qualities
Yeah.
on what it takes and how important it is in relationships, in leading teams,
Yeah, true.
and just in pastoring, and all sorts of different things, in finances, even in the medical field, like everywhere.
Yeah.
Being charismatic is very important.
Yeah.
It differentiates, the type of leaders that are mundane. They want you to do certain things.
Yeah.
If you maybe approach it in a charismatic way, people are apt to listen to you. People are
That's
gonna
very
listen.
key, and I believe this is an aspect of leadership that people take very, very lightly, because I believe once you know you are charismatic, you have invested enough into that aspect of your personality. Sometimes you can get things done by just you showing up.
Yeah.
You don't even say nothing. You were just there, and people they fall back in place because they know that you mean business, in a sense. Not that you bully people, not that you talk people down. It's just that, hey, it's an ability to get things done, Yep.
Yeah, that's really great. I mean, so far so good. I'm so in love. Like I said, I'm so in love with this conversation. So I really like.
I'm glad you added with this conversation.
I think it's good. It's beneficial. We're learning a lot.
Like,
It's changing a lot.
we talked about so many things like can help an entrepreneur succeeding in their life. An entrepreneur, what is skills that you need, how you can get those skills. And when you are an entrepreneur, you need to know that you are a leader.
Right.
Because when you start something, you might not do it by yourself. You will need it to build up a team. You will need to have people with you. And when you have a team, you need to show that leadership. And that's why we talk about all the skills to be a great leader. It's so incredible to the fact that I'm like, Taylor, what are you having for us?
No, I just wanted to share the book that I was actually thinking of. The author is Vanessa Van Edwards.
Okay.
Captivate.
Send me the link.
Yeah, so that book is very, very insightful on how to be charismatic, and it gives you specific qualities on how to approach certain situations in romantic situations, or even in business setting, or just in any type of setting. How to add charisma in your personality.
I mean, something Grace mentioned about, like, not responding in emotion to another emotion, right? So that thing really breaks.
That's how war starts.
Yeah. It breaks a lot of things, starting from relationship to business to companies, everything. When you want to react to when somebody's being emotional, you want to also. There's this book, I don't really recall the name. It's like focused thinking, something like that. It says, like, when you are a leader, either it's in your relationship or whatever you are, when you feel like you want to react emotionally to somebody who's being emotional, what you do is pause.
That's true. And to just kind of piggyback on what you were saying, I heard, I think it was either a comment on TV or whatever. They said that people that are in prison for 10 years or more, most of them, they even forgot the crime they committed.
Oh.
Because they found themselves that they acted emotionally in a certain situation that they even forget, like,
what did I do?
What did I do? Like, I killed somebody just because of that little silly thing, And
how do you forget you killed somebody?
No. Like, sometimes, like, it happened so quick that if you were to rewind it again, you knew that there was a million possibility that you could escape that 5 seconds of your emotions. Because that's, like, we've even see people fighting on the road, like road rage.
Yeah.
You're like, if you had just ignore it for like 10 seconds, that car was gonna go 80 miles per hour. You will have completely gone about your day. So
True. I mean, it's just that brings to emotional intelligence, right?
Yeah.
Like how to manage yourself, how to manage your emotions.
It's hard to manage other people if you cannot manage yourself. And there are a lot of people that literally, you see them, they're well presented, but once they, I don't want to use the word that you trigger them, but at least they feel triggered. It's just like they lose it, and they tell you like, I have completely lost it. I'm like, how can you lose yourself to that point? You know, it's, if you are somebody who is aspiring to lead people, especially into an entrepreneurial setting, you have to invest enough into your well-being, emotional, physical, intellectual, and everything else to make sure that you are balanced.
Sure.
Because wherever there's an imbalance, you might be the person that always has the great idea, but nobody will probably want to work for you.
No.
Because they feel like you just don't know how to either present the project, or you don't know how to present yourself. Either one of those bad is really bad.
True.
Yeah. So just I tell all my entrepreneurs, I'm like, are you reading? Are you exercising? Like, you have to be fit,
bro.
Because people, you know, it's a part of our life that most of us, you know, because it goes into a lot of discipline. Like, why do I need to run? Why do, you know, the brain has a lot of chemical in it. You know, you have to be balanced at all time. Make sure that you have the self-control. Make sure that you have study enough before you present yourself to people.
True.
You know, to some people, it might seem like a podcast, or it might seem like it was just some random meeting, but it might be a make or break in some points.
Yeah.
So, like, if you fail to prepare, you have prepared yourself to fail.
So, I love that. To finish up this episode where it's going really, because if we keep it up, we could go for hours and hours.
Might need to go on Facebook Live.
Hours and hours. Grace, can you please share some lesson that you've learned so far in your life, from where you started to where you are today?
Yeah.
What are the lessons that you've learned so far that can help a young entrepreneur I want to become an entrepreneur, maybe, like, you know.
I've learned a lot. I've learned that it pays great dividend to believe in yourself. You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe that there is more in you than you know of. I just recently became aware that the average human being only uses 4% of their brain. Throughout our entire existence.
Bro,
4%.
how is that possible?
So that's
sometimes you feel your brain drained, but
like,
you just use 4%.
I'm like, all the energy was 4%, so 96% of our brain is untapped. And not only that, is that we have two brains, and one is just sitting out there for backup. We never even given any type of information whatsoever. So I've learned the ability to believe in yourself. I've learned that it's never too late to learn something new. I've learned that it's important to know when you need to adjust. Adjustment is very key. It's important to be aware of your environment. Environment plays a major role in whether or not you'll be able to accomplish something. We are depending on who surrounds you, you will often hear about people saying, don't talk about your idea because somebody else is going to steal them. But you may be surprised that the person that might be able to help you with your idea is the person right next to you. But if you never say your idea, nobody's going to do it.
Exactly.
True.
You know, so that's kind of like, it matters where you get your information from. I've learned to delegate so you don't burn yourself out. You might be thinking of an airplane, like you have the whole concept in your brain, but it will take an engineer to bring it to life.
True.
So you have to be able to create a lot of bridges in life, because you just never know who's going to be helping you to achieve your goals. And I can go on and on. I've learned to trust God. There are a lot of times that you'll find yourself in a situation where if you don't trust God, you will completely give up. And I've learned that some of the big project that you're trying to do has nothing to do with money. It has everything to do in you first. Because for people will not bring you money into nothing that you haven't created. So you have to start working on it. You have to start working on that project. You have to start by putting it on the paper. You know, I'm a tax professional, so people come in my office all the time with all type of ideas. You hear it sounds genius, and you ask them, have you ever registered the business? They say no. So you haven't even started registering the business. So the next question is probably, do you have a business plan for that idea? They say no. So I'm like, if I have to step in, what am I stepping into? Am I stepping into your brain? You know, so take a step of faith, register that company. They gave, I think it was like during COVID, they gave a lot of PPP loan. They didn't give it to everybody. They gave it to folks that had business that were registered. So don't keep the idea in your brain. Register, surround yourself with people that will inspire you. There are a lot of people that we like, but we see them from far away. And then we want to go to the people that already have like the names known in community and stuff like that. While you can reach out to Taylor, you can reach out to your neighbor, or you can reach out to a colleague. But because of pride, sometimes we feel restrained to move forward. So those are my lifelong learned lesson in business. And number 2 in business is don't ever be afraid to do work for free.
Man.
Now, I know this one will challenge a lot of people.
This is controversial.
It is controversial, and this is why, especially, because a lot of time we want to have a fee for what we do, but sometimes we forget about the relationship that we build. So I'm always mindful, like if I cannot help this brother, what are the chances that I might be able to see him today or tomorrow? Me helping him for free might be a way for me to keep in contact with him. And so I'm not saying you have to work for free. I say help somebody for free. So you always gotta have that flexibility in you to say, you know what, you can't pay me right now. That's fine. I will still be able to help you out. Another thing, don't forget to give people the information. Don't forget to learn. Because you'll be surprised. The person right next to you might be your next manager. There are people that I've trained into different settings that have gone on to do great things. And some have even trained me to do great things. And sometimes when I look at myself, I'm like, if it wasn't for that guy, probably that guy doesn't probably think that what they gave me as a piece of information was helpful. But me, I know that this was what was needed. So just like right now, don't be afraid to share your platform to a lot of people. You'll never know when your next guest is going to be Jesus. So, wow, that's huge. Yeah. So sharing the lights. We are one big community. I think one of the challenge that we have is oftentimes you'll see people that you look at them as being successful, and indeed they are somewhat successful. You tell them, you're like, hey, how did you become what you have become? And they'll say, I cannot give you that information for free. You got to pay me.
You got to pay me.
So
I've heard that a few times,
but, you are growing stronger while your community and everyone around you is growing weaker. It's gonna catch up to you in the long run.
Yeah.
So we have to develop a sense of community where you find an information that's gonna help a brother. You're like, hey, come here, let me show you how to do this.
Yeah.
I have an information that might help you to get to where you're trying to go. And
that's the last point I wanted to
it's exhaustive.
The
list is not exhaustive, right?
That's so great.
No, I definitely wanted to mention